Around 5:30 on a Sunday evening, Rachel strolled through the front door, tossing her purse and keys onto the armchair by the entrance. She walked straight down the hallway toward our bedroom, not even glancing my way. I couldn't tell if she noticed me sitting in the den, but at this point, it didn't matter. I'd become practically invisible to her over the past few years. I got up, walked over to where she dropped her things, and picked up her keyring. I slipped off the spare keys she had for my Ford, then opened her purse. I pulled out her cell phone and wallet, removed all the cash and credit cards, and pocketed them. For good measure, I took her driver's license too. Then, I returned to my seat in the den. About 15 minutes later, Rachel came back down the hallway, dressed to impress. As she slung her purse strap over her shoulder and reached for her keys, she spotted me. "I'm heading out with the girls from work." "Don't wait up," she said. "You're not going out with the girls from work," I shot back. "Adam, by now you should know you don't control me." "I'll do what I want," she snapped. "I didn't say you couldn't go out with the girls," I replied. "I said you're not going with them. You're meeting your boyfriend. So stop lying." Rachel froze for a moment, then walked confidently into the den, standing right across from me as she laid out her ultimatum. "All right, Adam, since you know the truth, let's stop pretending. I wanted to handle this another way, but we might as well get this over with now. You've got two choices: either you go along with this arrangement and salvage what's left of our marriage, or I'll file for divorce and take everything. So what's it gonna be?" "I'm going with option 3, I said with a smirk. "Don't be immature. There is no third option. You either accept that I have a real man in my life now, or you prepare to suffer the consequences. And trust me, you will suffer." I stood up, walked over to Rachel, and gripped her shoulders, pressing her against the wall. I twisted her engagement and wedding rings off her finger. My face inches from hers, I locked eyes with her and whispered coldly, "Oh, there's a third option, all right. It's right over there. It's my front door. And when you walk out of it, it'll be for the last time. You'll leave with nothing but the clothes on your back, and you'll never set foot in this house again. No more money, no more car, no more house. You'll lose your husband, your daughter, your job, everything." "Adam, you're delusional," she mumbled, a nervous tremor in her voice. "My lawyer's going to tear you apart. I'll have the divorce papers served to you at work tomorrow. And if you lay a hand on me, you'll regret it even more." I pulled her away from the wall and marched her toward the front door. She stumbled in her high heels as I shoved her outside. Rachel nearly lost her balance, her usual composure completely shattered. In all the years we'd been married, I'd never physically touched her like this, and she had no idea how to react. She started to regain her attitude, standing out in the yard, but I simply closed the door and engaged the new locks. As Rachel sped off in her car, I made the first of 2 calls. I dialed my 19-year-old daughter at college. "Hey, sweetheart, it's your dad. Things have finally reached a breaking point with your mom. She'll probably be moving in with her boyfriend, and I wanted to be the first to tell you. I also want you to know that I've recorded our last conversation, along with hours of other arguments we've had. You'll have access to the truth if she tries to twist things and make me out to be the bad guy. And trust me, she will. Sweetheart, the reality is your mother has been unfaithful. I don't know how many men she's been involved with, but this time she's found someone worth throwing our family away for. As I'll explain more soon, it likely means this guy is pretty dangerous, so I want you to be extra cautious when dealing with your mom." I asked Natalie if she could come home over the weekend so we could talk things through, and if she wanted, she could listen to the recordings I had. Natalie agreed to drive home on Friday afternoon. My next call was to Claire, the neighbor who lived at the end of our street, a war widow in her mid-30s. "Hey, Claire, it's Adam. If your offer still stands, I'd like to take you up on it. Can you stop by in about an hour?" Now, I'm not one for long-winded stories about broken marriages, so I'll keep this brief. Rachel and I met and got married in our early 20s, and we had one daughter, Natalie. For a couple of years, things were good, but the spark faded fast for Rachel. Over time, she became downright bitter, always complaining, manipulating, and bossing me around. I tried to bite my tongue, to make things better for her, but the more I did, the worse things got. Looking back, I know now I made it worse by trying to please her for all those years. I should have taken control of the situation and put my foot down early on. So, here we were in our mid-40s, and everything had spiraled out of control. When I started suspecting Rachel and did some digging, it didn't take long to uncover the truth. She was involved with some bulked-up ex-con with a history of violence toward women. I doubt Rachel knew at first, but this guy, his name's Sebastian, though everyone calls him Seb, already had 2 other women when Rachel came along. Discovering this floored me, but at the same time, it made complete sense. When I realized the marriage was truly over, I felt a strange sense of relief and began planning my next moves. I've read stories where the husband walks away with half the assets, not me. I took every penny I could get my hands on, even snatching up any loose cash around the house. I changed the locks, naturally, and I had plans to make Rachel's life as miserable as I could, as fast as possible. After all, being married to her taught me a lot about how she reacts, and I was going to use that against her. Rachel could be a dangerous woman, but this time, she'd be her own worst enemy. I'd actually started planning long before I even knew about her affair. For a couple of years, I'd been secretly recording all of our arguments. She thought that little gadget I always carried was just an MP3 player, but in reality, I was building a library of evidence. I knew no one would believe me without proof, since Rachel only treated me badly when we were alone. Around others, especially our daughter, she played the role of the perfect wife. I wanted to be ready to expose her to everyone, from friends to family. The Monday after our showdown, I threw a little celebration in the break room at work. A big banner overhead read, "Happy Divorce," and I had cake and ice cream waiting. I was anxiously awaiting the arrival of the process server. Lucky for me, it turned out to be a cheerful young woman handling the task. There were plenty of pictures taken of me and my co-workers enjoying the moment as I accepted the divorce papers. One photo caught me giving the server a playful kiss on the cheek while she wore a party hat. Another showed me feeding her a piece of cake, both of us grinning. Once the party wrapped up, I sent the photos to Rachel, along with the rest from the celebration. I even attached a couple of pictures of Claire, my neighbor, and me lying in bed with the sheets pulled up to our necks, both of us grinning. I made sure Rachel could see her wedding rings on Claire's left hand, resting right on my chest. About an hour later, the phone rang, and an angry voice came through. "You liar. My lawyer is going to eat you alive with those pictures. You're such a fool." "Not likely, Rachel. There's nothing indecent or incriminating in those photos. No nudity, just a couple of neighbors having a laugh. They're just joke pics. We'll see about that, Adam. I'm coming by tonight to grab some of my things. I don't think that's going to happen. If I'm not there, you won't get in. I've changed all the locks. If you want anything, you'd better be here before 6:45 because Claire and I have plans at 7 o'clock, and trust me, I'm not going to be late. Last night was the best I've ever had, and there's more in store tonight." I hung up on her and didn't answer the 5 times she tried calling back. Around 4:30 that afternoon, I decided to take a little drive over to the parking lot where Rachel worked. I wanted to get there before people started leaving. I'd checked earlier to make sure there was no surveillance in the lot, and what I was about to do would only take a minute. I pulled up next to her car and quickly clipped the valve stems off all 4 tires with a pair of wire cutters. Oh yeah, she was going to be pissed, and there was no way she'd get that fixed in time to make it to the house by 6:45. But sure enough, she showed up around 6:35, clearly having hitched a ride from someone. I figured she must have been pretty desperate to get into the house. After all, I'd seen receipts for clothes she'd bought but hadn't brought home, so she definitely had plenty of stuff at her boyfriend's place. Whatever she wanted must have been important. I slipped out the back door and made my way down to Claire's house while Rachel was left pounding on the front door and yelling. When I came back later that evening, I found the front door window shattered, with blood smeared all around it. I checked the surveillance footage from the porch and saw Rachel smashing the window with a tire iron, probably from her friend's car. You could hear her screaming threats to kill me as she broke the glass and reached in. Unfortunately for her, I'd installed a deadbolt that required a key to unlock from both sides. When she pulled her arm back out, she sliced up her forearm pretty badly, setting off another round of hysterical screaming and threats. I called the police right away, and an officer walked me through the process of filing for a protective order. By the next morning, Rachel had been served with papers, barring her from coming within 500 feet of me or the house. To say she was furious would be an understatement. "What the hell do you think you're doing, you jerk?" she screamed when she called. She was seething with anger, but I recorded the entire conversation without her knowing. A few hours later, after she had calmed down a bit, she called again. This time, she told me she was sending her friend Megan over to pick up some of her things. I wondered what she was so desperate to get from the house, but I agreed to let Megan come by at 5:30 that Tuesday evening. I left work early that day to set up a camera in the bedroom, with a monitor in the guest room. Megan showed up right on time, and I greeted her politely. I sat on the bed while she loaded a couple of black trash bags with clothes. Megan seemed a little nervous, and after a while, she asked if I could grab her some water from the kitchen. I smiled and stepped into the guest room. As soon as I looked at the monitor, I saw her slip a shoebox from the closet into one of the bags. Then, she went back to sorting through clothes. I quickly fetched a glass of water from the kitchen and headed back to the bedroom. "I think that's everything," Megan said. "Can you grab that bag, and I'll take this one?" "Oh, that one looks heavier, Megan." "I'll handle it," I offered. No, it's fine. Just grab the other one, okay?" "Is there something in that bag I should be aware of, Megan?" I asked as she started to fidget and dragged the bag toward the door. I gently took hold of her wrist and unzipped the bag. "It's just clothes and things Rachel needs," she said nervously. "You're a terrible liar, Meg. What's in this box I'm feeling down here? Want to explain this?" I pulled out the shoebox and popped the lid open. Inside, the box was stuffed with bundles of $50 and $100 bills, all worn and used. "Megan, you're trying to steal from me." I stood up, twisted her arm behind her gently, and marched her toward the door and down the hallway. "That's Rachel's money. She sent me here to get it. I'm not stealing a thing." "Well, you came into my house for clothes, and I caught you walking out with a box of cash. I call that stealing. I didn't see Rachel's name anywhere on that box. You're a thief, Megan, and I'm about to call the cops." "No, Adam, please don't. I can't go to jail, I've got kids and a husband. Please." I sat her down on the couch, leaning in close as I spoke. "Megan, you're not welcome here anymore. I thought you were a friend, but now I know you're a thief." She begged and started to cry. "If you want a chance to make things right, you've got one option. Leave this house and tell Rachel I caught you stealing. Then, you'll report back to me everything you hear or see, especially anything related to our divorce or her business with Seb. You'll keep quiet about our deal. Rachel's making a huge mistake with that lowlife, and by doing this, you'll be helping her in the long run. If you don't cooperate, Megan, I've got this whole thing on video, and I can call the police anytime." Megan reluctantly agreed to be my informant. As soon as she left, I took the box of money over to Claire's house down the street. She agreed to hold on to it for me until I could find a safer place where Rachel would never think to look. I had a pretty good idea where that money came from. Rachel's Aunt Margaret had been a notorious penny pincher, and when she passed away a few months back, Rachel had been her sole heir. I knew she'd inherited a little cabin out in the sticks, but nothing had ever been mentioned about money. Apparently, when Rachel went to check out the cabin after the will was read, she must have discovered her aunt's stash of cash. Later, when Rachel called me, screaming about the money, I recorded the conversation, making sure to watch what I said. "That money is mine, Adam. I want my damn money back." "Rachel, I don't know what you're talking about. I caught Megan trying to steal cash from my nightstand. That's my money." "You know exactly what I mean, the money in the shoebox." "It's mine, from Aunt Margaret. I inherited it." "Well, maybe Megan did find some money in a shoebox, but if she did, she must have taken it with her. I don't have it. Maybe she stole it from you. And if you had that kind of money here and didn't mention it, then you didn't report it on last year's taxes. I know that because I read and signed off on the returns. So go ahead, call the cops, and then we'll have the IRS take a look into this mysterious money." She slammed the phone down. I knew there'd be some sort of payback. I'd pushed Rachel too far for her not to retaliate. Since the restraining order kept her away from the house, I figured she might target my car next. After all, I'd started this by messing with her tires. To prepare, I installed a camera on my dashboard. But that wasn't enough. I wanted clear footage of her in action if she went down that road, so when I parked in the garage Wednesday morning, I set up a hidden camera outside the car, transmitting live video to my laptop. Around an hour before lunch, I watched as Rachel pulled into the lot and parked behind my car. She got out with a hammer in hand and started going to town on my Toyota. She smashed every window, dented every fender, and even cracked the windshield while shouting, "I'm gonna bash your head in." I winced a little watching the damage unfold, but I kept calm and dialed 911. By the time she emerged from the garage, a cop car was waiting. Once I showed the officers the video and the wrecked state of my car, they cuffed Rachel and hauled her off to jail. She'd done enough damage to qualify for felony charges, and to top it off, she resisted arrest. As they led her away, she shot me a pleading look, but I just stared back at her, saying nothing. On that same Wednesday, Rachel's divorce attorney gave me a call, letting me know about a hearing scheduled for Thursday morning regarding the money I'd taken from our joint accounts. The hearing was set for 10 a.m. I showed up early, at 9:50, wondering if Rachel had managed to post bail. Sure enough, she strolled in right on time with her lawyer, a smug expression plastered on her face. Her lawyer kicked things off. "Your Honor, my client has been cut off from her shared bank accounts. Her husband unlawfully withdrew all the funds after she filed for divorce. We request an immediate 50-50 split." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Anderson, do you have a response?" "Yes, Your Honor. My unfaithful wife has been quietly siphoning money out of our joint accounts for months. The funds I withdrew were more than fair since I've been paying the mortgage and all the bills. She abandoned our marriage and moved in with the man she's been cheating on me with." Rachel shot to her feet. "That's a lie. He emptied all our accounts, savings, checking, everything. I don't have a dime left." Her lawyer pulled her back into her seat, and they had a brief exchange. Meanwhile, I handed the judge a folder. "Your Honor, these are the bank records from the past year. As you'll see, I've highlighted her regular paycheck deposits in yellow and her bonuses in orange. But 6 months ago, her deposits stopped showing up in our joint account altogether. I also have a recording from her company's HR department, confirming that she changed her direct deposit around that time. The total amount she's diverted is in the thousands, Your Honor. Clearly, my wife has more than enough funds, all siphoned off without my knowledge." The judge reviewed the paperwork before peering over his glasses at Rachel. "Ms. Anderson, care to explain this?" Her lawyer slowly stood up. "Your Honor, even if my client has personal funds, that doesn't absolve Mr. Anderson of his financial obligations to her. The judge shook his head. Counselor, I don't take kindly to being lied to. Your client claimed she was destitute, yet here she is, accompanied by a high-priced attorney. Now, we see she's been secretly hoarding money that should have been community property. Mr. Anderson is covering all the household expenses from his own funds. I see no reason to alter the current financial arrangements. When the divorce is finalized, the assets will be properly divided. Case dismissed. Rachel caught me in the hallway as I was heading out. I started recording as soon as she spoke. I'm going to ruin you, you bastard. I'll tear you down piece by piece. Rachel, you're not supposed to be within 500 feet of me. If you don't back off, I'm calling the cops. How was jail, by the way? Ready to spend more time there? You've got a felony hanging over your head. I could tell she wanted to take a swing at me, but I kept walking down the hall, making my way to the door. She just stood there, fists clenched, her face red with anger. That evening, I decided to stop by a local bar, not my usual spot, but the place where I'd met an interesting guy about a month ago. What made him stand out was the piece of junk car he drove. Fortunately, Zeke was there, perched on his usual bar stool. Hey, man, I remember you. What was your name again? Doesn't matter, Zeke. Hey, you still driving that old hunk of junk? Oh yeah, unfortunately. I hate that thing. The wife took the good car when she ran off with some guy in a suit. Now the AC's busted in mine, and I'm roasting. Nobody wants to buy it, and I'm stuck with it. She took all the money, and my credit's shot. Is the insurance up to date? Because if it is, I think I can help you out. Zeke's eyes lit up. I'm listening, bro. Let's say you're driving down 38th Street, and out of nowhere, a gray cat darts across the road. You slam on your brakes, and a lady behind you, tailgating like crazy, plows into the back of your car. At anything over 15 miles per hour, it's a total loss. You brace yourself, wear your seatbelt, and insurance covers the whole thing. With the payout, you could get something with working AC. Zeke looked skeptical. Yeah, but what if the person who hits me gets hurt? I can't do that to someone who doesn't deserve it. Well, I can guarantee you it'll be an unfaithful wife, driving alone, if you follow my instructions. How does that sound? His face broke into a grin. Man, that'd be perfect. I hate cheaters, and I sure need to get rid of this clunker. Then park at the corner of 38th and Lessing by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Watch for a blue Miata to pull out of the lot. Get in front of her, drive a block, and when she's riding your bumper, see that cat cross the street and hit the brakes. Stay in the car afterward, call 911, and tell them you think you've got whiplash. And remember, we've never met. I'm never coming back to this bar, and you don't know me. Man, you're cold. Not as cold as the AC in your next ride, I replied. I left work early on Friday to meet up with my daughter at the house. She had wrapped up her classes and hurried back home, just like we planned on Sunday night. We sat and talked for a while about the divorce, and I played her the recording of my last conversation with her mother, the one where Rachel gave me her door number 3 ultimatum. Patty was stunned, hearing how harsh and manipulative her mom sounded. Then, I let her listen to a few other recordings I'd collected over the past 2 years. She finally heard the side of Rachel she never knew existed. What do you know about the guy she's with, Dad? I know he's trouble, and I need you to steer clear of him. If you meet up with your mom, do it in a public place, where there are plenty of people around. I don't know what this guy's capable of, and I don't want him trying to get to me through you. Stay safe and always protect yourself if he's anywhere near. Dad, I knew you and Mom had issues, but I never realized just how deep it ran. What on earth happened between you two? I'd been ready for that question, and I gave her a long explanation of my perspective. Here's the shorter version of it. Patty, after a lot of reflection, I've come to the conclusion that your mom and I just had very different ideas about how a marriage should work. I've been thinking about it, and I've come up with a theory. Someone's probably already written this down in a book somewhere, but this is just what I figured out on my own. I think there are 4 basic ways authority can be distributed in a relationship. First, there's the situation where neither person takes control, and everything just kind of drifts aimlessly, like a ship without a rudder. Another scenario is when both people take charge, and that can either lead to constant fighting or maybe they divvy things up, each person taking control over certain parts of the relationship. Some couples even manage to share responsibility equally. That's what I expected going into the marriage, but it didn't turn out that way. Then, there's the option where the man is in charge. That can work under the right conditions. These days, we tend to think of that kind of relationship as outdated or even oppressive, but if the man truly loves and cares for his wife, it can be like a fairy tale. Think of Snow White and Prince Charming. It can be a pretty great life for a wife with the right temperament. She wouldn't have to worry about making tough decisions because she'd trust her husband to handle things. Or it can go the other way, like what you saw with your grandparents. Your grandma was quiet and meek, while your grandpa was overbearing and, at times, downright cruel. That's what your mom grew up with, and looking back, I think that's what she expected from our relationship. So when I tried to be an equal partner, I think she saw it as weakness. The more I tried to accommodate her, the less respect she had for me. And then there's the last possibility, the wife takes control. I think at some point, your mom decided she wanted to be the boss. When I didn't fit her idea of a strong, dominating husband, she started treating me poorly. She dictated what projects I was supposed to do, and they had to be done exactly the way she wanted. I can't count the number of times she stood over me while I was working, telling me how to hold a hammer or screwdriver, micromanaging every little detail. It got to the point where I just couldn't finish anything because I felt like an employee being mistreated in my own home. The thing is, when the wife is the dominant one, it usually goes against human nature. I don't think that kind of dynamic works in most marriages. A husband can take charge and still have love and affection for his wife, but when a woman dominates her husband, she loses respect for him. I believe that's what happened with your mom and me. By the time I started pushing back and standing up for myself, it was too late. She didn't see it as me taking charge, she just saw me as a rebellious kid refusing to do what I was told. I could never win back her respect. This divorce is my last chance to make her respect me, so when you see me making things difficult for her, you'll understand why. I paused for a moment, then added, Patty, one day you'll find someone you want to spend your life with. When that time comes, make sure you and your partner are on the same page about things like having kids, where to live, and especially how you're going to share authority. You both need to know what to expect, and there needs to be mutual respect. Without it, you'll both be miserable, and you might end up in a situation like your mom and me. I will, Dad, I promise. A little while later, the phone rang. Mr. Anderson, this is Memorial Hospital. Your wife's been in a car accident. She's stable and not too badly injured, but she'll be staying with us overnight. Patty and I drove to the hospital, and I let her go into the room first. She didn't stay long, and when she came out looking grim, I figured some harsh words had passed between them. I walked into the room and greeted Rachel with a smirk. You look like hell, Rachel, I said. Rough week, huh? First, you lose your marriage, your husband, and the house. Then you get slapped with a restraining order, arrested for a felony, miss out on the money you were counting on, and now your car's totaled, and you're in the hospital with a busted wrist and a face bruised by the airbag. This divorce is turning out great for me. I've even got some fantastic, __, on standby whenever I want it. Forget you, she snapped. By the way, where's good ol' Seb? Hasn't come by to visit? No worries, he's probably with one of his other women. She went pale. Guess you didn't know about the others when you got into this, huh? Well, you know now. Wonder how long it'll be before he wants you to share one of them. Never figured you for that type, but you might want to learn, it could come in handy in prison. I'm not going to jail. My lawyer's going to get those charges dropped. Is that right? Funny, when I spoke to the DA, he seemed pretty eager to throw the book at you. He's got all the evidence he needs, and with an election coming up, he's aiming to look tough on crime. I think you're looking at the max sentence. Rachel just stared at me. Hey, speaking of bad news, what car insurance did you end up getting? Car insurance? What are you talking about? We still have the same. Oh, you didn't know. I dropped your car from our policy the moment you filed for divorce. You wanted the Miata in your name, so it's your responsibility. If you didn't get coverage this week, you're in big trouble. There's going to be a couple of tickets, towing fees, and 3 years of payments on that totaled car sitting in a junkyard. I paused for effect, then added, but I guess you won't need a car anyway if you lose your job after that felony conviction. Plus, the guy you hit might have medical bills, and his insurance company is definitely coming after you for damages. Quite the mess you've made for yourself. Rachel looked defeated, but I wasn't done. At least you've got health insurance, right? I asked. I'm still on your. Nope, I dropped you off my health plan on Monday. You didn't handle that either. Wow, you're in for a treat. An ambulance ride, the ER, X-rays, doctors, that cast on your wrist, it's going to cost you thousands. You're really screwed, Rachel. I leaned in a little closer. You know, this reminds me of that time a couple of years back when you were really sick. I took a week off work to take care of you, remember? I held your hair back when you threw up, cleaned up after you, ran to the pharmacy to get your meds. Then, as soon as you got better, you went right back to treating me like dirt. Wonder how Seb will handle it when you're sick next time. I stood up and headed for the door. Anyway, I've got to go. Give Seb a call when he's done with his side affairs. Enjoy your life. Rachel just sat there crying as I left. I didn't care. For a while after that, things were relatively quiet. I checked in with Megan now and then. She was getting more alarmed about how much control Seb had over Rachel, and eventually, she started distancing herself from them. One evening, as I was walking up to my front door, I got blindsided. I'd been careful, expecting something like this, but I didn't see it coming. The guy, wearing a ski mask, knocked the wind out of me and twisted my arm behind my back. He growled in my ear, demanding the shoebox of money and for me to tell the DA to drop the charges. I recognized the voice, it was Seb. I wasn't in any position to fight him off, but I still had my car remote in my hand. I hit the panic button, and the alarm started blaring. Seb cursed and clocked me in the back of the head before taking off as neighbors' lights flicked on and people began peeking outside. I yelled for someone to call 911, and within a few minutes, a cop showed up. I wasn't hurt badly enough to need an ambulance, and Sly was long gone by the time they arrived. None of my neighbors could identify him, so he got away with the attack. A worse shock came the next day when I called my daughter to tell her what happened. Dad, I didn't want to bring this up, but I had a run-in with Sly, too. Mom called and asked me to come over to talk, so I said we could meet somewhere outside her apartment. But when I got there, she pulled me in and had me sit on the couch. That's when Sly walked out and started talking. He said that since Mom couldn't perform well because of her injuries, I'd have to make up for it. He claimed she owed him, and I was the payment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked at Mom, and she just stared at the floor. Then Sly said, "Tell her to do it." And Mom, she looked right at me and said, "Please, honey, just go along with him. It won't be that bad, and I really need you to do this for me." Then Sly grabbed my wrist, pulling me up, saying we were headed to the bedroom. But I had my hand on the pepper spray in my purse. As he yanked me up, I sprayed him right in the face. He screamed, clutching his eyes, and I grabbed my purse, tried to pull Mom out of there with me, but she just ran to help him. I called for her to come, but she was too busy helping him into the bathroom, so I left. I can't believe my own mom tried to pimp me out to that bastard. I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive her for that. Hearing that had me boiling mad, as any father would be. I started thinking about the Beretta I kept in the bedroom and almost made a move for it. But Patty calmed me down, reminding me that she didn't get hurt and asking me to think about the future. I made her promise to stay at school until the trial was over and to always carry protection. She assured me she'd only go out with groups of friends and never let herself be caught alone, and I eventually got a handle on my anger. Sly had warned me to talk to the DA, but not in the way he was expecting. I played the recording of Patty's story for the DA, reminding him that Sly had already assaulted me. The DA asked if I wanted to ease up on Bev or maybe drop the charges. Absolutely not. I want you to push for the maximum. Bev's under Sly's control, and the only way I see to help her is to get her away from him. Some time behind bars might be the wake-up call she needs. The DA agreed, and the trial proceeded as planned. I felt relatively safe at home and work, but there were moments when I knew I was vulnerable. The walk to and from the parking garage, for instance, or especially during the drives to and from work. Our house is in a subdivision about 10 miles down a ranch road, and for a good 15 miles, it's the only turnoff from that road. The only other properties out there are large ranches with locked gates, so I was always hyper-aware of the other vehicles around me on that stretch. I kept the Beretta in the car with me at all times. One evening, just a few days before Bev's trial was set to start, I noticed the headlights of a pickup behind me, about 2 miles from home. Something didn't feel right. Soon enough, the truck was tailgating me at 55 miles per hour, no more than 20 feet from my bumper. I dialed 911 and hit the record button on my phone as I sped up to 70. The pickup stuck with me. I gave the operator a running commentary of what was happening, asking her to get in touch with the detective who had worked on my assault case. The pickup kept up the pressure for 5 more miles as I frantically updated the 911 operator. The pistol was out on the seat beside me, safety off. Up ahead was a bridge over a small creek with concrete abutments, an old-fashioned setup. I had a gut feeling that this was where Sly, or whoever was behind the wheel, was going to make their move. With about 100 yards left before the bridge, the pickup sped up, and I knew they were going to try and run me off the road. As the truck pulled alongside me, I caught a glimpse of Rachel in the passenger seat. I slammed on the brakes hard enough to send my car into a slide, but not so hard that I lost control. The truck swerved in front of me, but thanks to my braking, it missed clipping my front bumper. My car ended up sideways on the shoulder, with the rear wheels teetering on the slope down to the creek bed. I scrambled out, grabbing my pistol, phone, and recorder, and hurried down the gravel slope, taking cover under the bridge. As I made my way down, I saw the pickup's brake lights flick on. I stumbled in the dark, trying to find a safe hiding spot under the bridge. All I could think about was not meeting a rattlesnake in the dark, but the only snake I was worried about at that moment was Sly. My heart was pounding as I found a spot and chambered around in the Beretta. I waited, but the only thing I heard was silence. My phone call to 911 had dropped, and trying to redial from under the bridge wasn't working. I had no signal. I had no clue if help was on the way, but at least the sound of the truck's engine had faded. I wasn't about to make a move. If I had to, I'd wait there all night. It felt like forever, but probably only 5 or 10 minutes passed before I heard the faint sound of sirens in the distance. They were coming from the same direction I'd been driving. By the time they'd arrive, though, the pickup would be long gone. When I heard the sirens get closer and saw their lights reflecting off the trees, I headed back up the slope, leaving the Beretta hidden under the bridge. As I approached the road, hands up, I saw 2 cop cars blocking both lanes. At the same time, I heard more sirens approaching from the other direction. I hit the ground when I realized the pickup was coming back toward the bridge. From the ground, I couldn't see much, but I heard the pickup screech to a halt. The officers shouted at the driver to get out and get on the ground. More cop cars arrived behind the truck, and soon enough, it was over. Rachel and Sly were both arrested, charged with attempted murder. Shaken but alive, I went home, took a long shower, and spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. When your spouse is facing multiple felony charges, divorce proceedings tend to go smoothly. The judge seemed sympathetic, and Bev, along with her frazzled lawyer, offered no resistance. She was desperate to avoid as much jail time as possible. Through her attorney, she offered to give me just about everything in the divorce if I'd help lighten her sentence. At her sentencing hearing, I testified that Rachel had been a good wife and mother, at least until she got involved with Sly. I told the judge that I believed, in time, I could forgive her for trying to have me killed. What I didn't mention was all the cheating and the hell she'd put me through for years. I couldn't tell what Rachel was thinking as she sat there, and we never spoke directly during the whole ordeal. Sly ended up getting a long prison sentence. It wasn't his first offense. I like to think he's sharing a cell with someone like Bubba, who finds him just as appealing as Candy. The judge went easier on Rachel, but she still faced at least 3 years before she'd be eligible for parole. It's been about 4 years since Rachel went to prison. I heard from the DA's office that she got out on parole about a year ago. I kept expecting to hear from her, but she never reached out. I know she hasn't contacted Patty either. As much as revenge feels good, it doesn't bring the closure I thought it would. I kept thinking about everything that had happened, and then I did something I never imagined. I decided to look up my ex-wife. Rachel, it's Jack. I've got something that belongs to you, and I'd like to give it back. I was calling the halfway house where Rachel was staying. For several long seconds, I wasn't sure if she had heard me. There was nothing but silence on the other end. Rachel, I've got a shoebox for you. Can we meet somewhere so I can return it? I thought she might hang up, but eventually, she spoke. Where? When? I'm open to whatever works for you. We can meet somewhere neutral, like a restaurant, or if you're comfortable, you can come by the house. How does Sunday sound? Are you available then? She was quiet again for a moment. I'll be by on Sunday at 2 o'clock. And with that, the phone went dead. How do you prepare for a meeting with your ex-wife, the mother of your child, the woman who tried to kill you, and a convicted felon? I made lemonade, baked cookies, and dressed casually. When Rachel arrived, I opened the door, but neither of us made any move to shake hands, let alone hug. We just said hello, and I gestured for her to come inside. Her hair was much shorter than before, and her face looked hard. She wore little makeup, if any. She was 50 now, and it showed. On the coffee table, I had set out drinks, cookies, and the shoebox. She took a seat across from me, and I offered her some refreshments, which she declined. Did she think I'd try to poison her? Well, if you're not interested in lemonade and cookies, I guess all that's left is the shoebox and whatever we have to say to each other. What's the catch, Jack? What do you want in return? Is there anything even left in it? She was still as suspicious as ever. No catch, Rachel. It's all there, except for a few thousand I used, along with some of my money, to help Patty with a down payment on her house when she got married. If you want, Patty would be happy to start paying you back anytime. The expression on Rachel's face told me she hadn't known Patty was married. Patty's married? When? 2 years now. You're a grandmother. Her daughter's name is Shannon Beverly Evans. Shannon is the name of her other grandmother. Despite her best efforts, Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Rachel, I know you haven't spoken to Patty in a long time. There's a way to reconnect if you want to. I can help make that happen. Rachel nodded, and tears began to roll down her cheeks. I reached for the tissue box and set it on the coffee table. So, unless you're planning to leave right away, I'll give you a brief update on what's been going on with me. She wiped her cheeks, trying to regain her composure. Patty married a great guy, Stan Evans. He works in computers and networking. They're a great match, and she's an amazing mom. They're devoted to each other. As for me, Martha and I didn't last more than a few months. She was too young for me, and honestly, I think she just needed someone to get her through a tough time. She found another soldier, moved away, and that was that. I still date occasionally, but I end things before they get serious. I'm better off alone, and that's how I'll stay. There was a pause, a quiet moment that stretched between us. I'm going to say some things now, mostly for my own sake, but maybe you'll get something out of it too. At first, I couldn't wait to see you locked up. I hated you. I imagined you dead so many times. But when they finally sent you to prison, something in me shifted. I realized I wasn't finding any joy in my so-called victory. Over time, I stopped hating you, even though you never asked for forgiveness. I forgave you anyway. I came to understand that you're not entirely to blame. I failed to understand you, and by the time I did, it was too late. We just never could communicate, we only ever fought. Beverly had regained her composure by the time she looked up from the floor. That hard edge of hers was back, but she still didn't say anything. Well, that's pretty much it, short and simple. Unless you've got something you want to say, and if you're not interested in the refreshments, I won't keep you any longer. I'm sure you've got important things to do. She stood, picked up the shoebox, and made her way toward the front door. For the first time since I had pushed her out all those years ago, I called after her. It doesn't matter anymore, and you don't have to answer this unless you want to, but I've been wondering. All that time we were together, especially on that last day, you made it clear that you thought I was weak. Do you still think I'm weak, Rachel? She stopped with her hand on the doorknob and turned to look at me. I hate you. You're cruel, and you ruined my life, she said, her voice steady. Then she paused. But no, I don't think you're weak. And with that, she was gone.